P.T. Logan's 5 Minutes of Terror. Twisted, troubling tales to send a chill up your spine.
Telephone booth. There aren't many telephone booths around town anymore. 15 years ago, there would have been one on nearly every street corner. A quarter to make any local call you wanted. But now, in a world where everyone and their mother owns a cell phone, there's little need for them. Relics, like VCRs or CD-ROMs, all collecting dust in either a landfill or someone's basement. Even when phone booths were more common, it was exceedingly rare to hear one actually ring. These phones had a number, sure, but they were almost exclusively used for outgoing calls. If you were done hanging out at the mall with your friend and you needed your mom to pick you up, you'd grab the phone and call her. If your friend who was always late still hadn't arrived at the arcade, you would call him up and tell him to hurry. But to hear it actually ring, very strange. Because the phones were in public locations, it wasn't as if the person calling at a random time, at a random place, could possibly know who would be walking by at precisely that moment. Could they? This is what went through my mind when I passed one of the few remaining phone booths in my town and it actually started to ring. At first, I thought it was my cell phone ringing, but that turned out not to be the case. I stopped outside the booth after I realized that the phone was ringing and glanced around. Aside from an old lady walking her dog on the other side of the street, I was the only one near the booth. I just stared at the phone while it rang, and eventually it stopped. Strange, I think, with a shrug. Then I start to walk again, heading toward the local grocery store. It's Tuesday, and I always do my groceries for the week on Tuesday. I take only a handful of steps before the phone starts to ring again. As before, I stop and stare at it as if the phone is some sort of ancient relic instead of something from the 80s. Even though I know there's no one else around, I still feel compelled to glance up and down the street. A thought occurs to me then, and I check my watch. It's 10:30 in the morning. If someone were trying to reach me with this payphone, then this would be the exact time. 10:30 on a Tuesday, right in front of Miniku Groceries. With another shrug, I decide to open the phone booth. It stinks inside the plastic box. It smells like burnt tires and stale breath. Grimacing, I grab the phone and pick it up. I don't say hello or hi. I just listen. At first, I hear nothing, but just as I'm about to hang up, the person on the other end of the line, the stranger calling a random phone booth on a Tuesday morning, takes a deep breath. And now I say, hello? There's another deep breath, and then, Andy, is that you? For some reason, the mention of my own name sends a shiver up my spine. Andy? The person asks again. Yeah, I reply tentatively. Who's this? One final deep breath from this stranger, whose voice sounds mildly familiar, and then, do not go into Miniku today. The shiver in my spine turns into an icicle. What? Why? When there's no reply, I add, who is this? But the line has already gone dead. I pull the phone away from my ear and stare at it for a moment, still confused as to what just happened. Then I hang up, still shaking my head, continuing on my way to the grocery store. But with every step, my confidence begins to fade. Who was that person? Why do they sound familiar? And why can't I do my regular grocery shop? All these questions race through my mind as Miniku comes into view. Do not go into Miniku today. It wasn't the words themselves that were haunting, but the tone of voice. And about that voice, why did it sound so familiar? The next step I take is like I'm walking through quicksand, and then I stop completely, surveying the store. It sure looks normal. I can see Mike behind the counter, greeting customers. I spot Mrs. Margot pursuing the cat food aisle. This is silly, I think, but I still don't move. I just watch, and a moment later, I hear it. A car approaching. Not all that strange considering the time and day, but it begins to get louder and louder. I look behind me and see the massive Lincoln Navigator barreling toward not just the store, but me. I leap out of the way just in time and then cover my head and ears as it smashes through the glass storefront. There are screams, both organic and mechanical, but for some reason, I manage to block these out. All I can hear is the person's voice on the phone. Do not go into Miniku today. And that's when I realized why it sounded so familiar. It was me. Older, sure, but the voice on the other end of the phone booth was undoubtedly mine.
P.T. Logan's 5 Minutes of Terror. Twisted, troubling tales to send a chill up your spine.